Thank you for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee in Seoul. Here are today's highlights. Korea's finance minister is keeping a close eye on potential market volatility amid escalating tensions between North Korea and the U.S. The Bank of Korea expects the country's rapidly aging population to result in a heavier fiscal burden 50 years from now. These stories and more coming right up. Seoul's finance chief held a ministerial meeting on Monday where he warned other cabinet members of the economic impact of North Korea's recent missile tests. He also discussed other big issues here at home on how the government would set aside enough finances for its welfare programs. Our Woo Soo-young starts us off.
Amid rising geopolitical tensions after North Korea's ICBM test last month, South Korea's Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon has warned that a surge of volatility in the financial market cannot be ruled out. Speaking at an economic meeting with his government counterparts on Monday, Kim noted that while North Korea's provocations in the past had limited impact on the markets, there has been an escalation of global uncertainties this time around, making the market's reaction all the more sensitive to shocks. Seoul's local stock markets and currency took a tumble after US President Trump warned that there would be severe consequences for Pyongyang if it carries out a strike on American soil. The finance chief said Seoul will work around the clock to monitor the economy and financial market, as well as global developments. Another major point of discussion during the meeting was the government's budget plan for next year, which is set to be finalized by the end of the month. The finance minister had suggested last week a significant cut of $9.7 billion in government expenditure, $2 billion more than initially planned. This would support the government's 5-year policy agenda of achieving a paradigm shift to resolve the country's chronic socio-economic problems of low growth and income polarization by boosting job creation and welfare.
The government intends to maintain the soundness and stability of its finances and national debts, all while fulfilling its promises to the people.
Regarding the government's plans announced last week to expand basic livelihood support, Kim said the costs were already reflected in the comprehensive national policy agenda's budget. Meanwhile, widening health insurance coverage would be backed with greater support from the National Treasury, as well as an increase in premiums. He added that various ministries have been fine-tuning the details of increasing basic pension payouts and childcare benefits, which will be released in the near future. Woo Soo-young, Business Daily.
As the U.S. and North Korea continues to butt heads, sales of gold bars have been surging. Ones that are smaller and easy to carry were in particularly high demand. Our Lee Joo-young has more.
The demand for gold is on the rise in Korea as tensions with North Korea escalate. According to the Korea Gold Exchange, while an average of 50 100-gram mini gold bars were sold per day before the latest crisis, the figure has now shot up to 250 after President Donald Trump threatened the communist regime with quote-unquote fire and fury. Sales of 10-gram mini gold bars also surged roughly fivefold. Amid this renewed flare-up in tensions with North Korea, investors flocked to gold during this period of uncertainty, boosting demand for safe haven assets. Smaller bars in general, weighing less than 1 kilogram, were in high demand as they're easy to transport and carry in case of an emergency.
People prefer lighter gold bars in times of conflict. As with the case with Yeonpyeon, we always see this trend emerge temporarily in times of crisis.
The international financial market is also seeing a similar trend. After the rogue state announced plans to launch missiles that would fly over to Japan and land near the U.S. territory of Guam, international investors have been flocking to safe haven assets such as gold and U.S. government bonds. As a result, the New York Mercantile Exchange says international gold prices, which was trading at roughly $1,250 an ounce on August 8th, surged by more than $30 in a few days.
North Korea has rapidly emerged as a critical risk factor in the global financial market. Gold prices have not risen so much compared to other assets this year either.
As tensions escalate, the government convened a ministerial meeting on Monday to discuss countermeasures and pacify market volatility. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
Korea's national debt continues its steady upward climb as it's poised to surpass the 700 trillion won mark next year. The national debt clock, a log based on the National Assembly's Budget Office data, had exceeded 665 trillion won as of Sunday evening, equivalent to some $584 billion US. Now, that's a debt load of roughly $11,350 per person, based on Statistics Korea's 2017 population estimate of 51.4 million. It's also a jump up of $465 per person from last year's figures. National debt includes borrowing incurred by central and provincial governments, but excludes liabilities held by state-run companies and the Bank of Korea. What kind of fiscal burdens will the Korean government be bearing 5 decades from now, well after the trend of a shrinking workforce becomes clear? The Bank of Korea considered this question, and our Eunice Kim has the results.
Analyzing OECD data spread between 2009 and 2013, the Bank of Korea projected fiscal trends the country could be facing years from now. Assuming 1% growth, zero inflation, and spending that keeps at about a third of GDP, the study found the central government would bear extra annual expenditures of 2.8 trillion won in the years through 2065. Collectively, that's a sum of 140 trillion won over the 5-decade period, an equivalent of $122 billion US. The biggest variable is Korea's aging population. The economically active population, that is, people between 15 and 64 years of age, is set to drop, with the impact of a labor shortage to be felt by the greater economy starting in 10 to 15 years. Estimates by the central bank put Korea's economically active population at 24.5 million people by 2050. That's a decline of 13% from last year, or 3.6 million less income generators. Less breadwinners will most likely also lead to a shrinking government income. Aside from consumption tax, all other forms of tax revenues are set to fall, amounting to $41.2 billion, or about 28% over the 50-year period, according to the study's projections. This as expenditures are set to rise. Health and welfare programs are poised to require roughly $4.9 billion more per year in state funding, while spending on education will likely fall, albeit marginally. The report estimates an approximate $439 million annual decline in education outlays as the pool of children 15 years old and younger shrink. Identifying these trends, the report argues for forward planning for the government today if it's to cushion the coming impact. It recommends growth-inducing policies, including rethinking hiring norms as they relate to underutilized groups such as women, the elderly, and foreign workers. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And moving on to markets, after a week of geopolitical tensions between the U.S. and North Korea that rattled markets around the world, South Korean stocks are starting to look up again. Joining us on the line is our markets contributor, Lee Ji-hye. Hello, Ji-hye.
Hello, Ji-yoon.
All right, so tell us how the local stocks performed on the first day of trade.
Sure. South Korean stocks performed quite well overall, with the Kospi rising 0.63% to close at 2,334.22, and the Kazakh also up 0.16% to close at 629.37. The main bourse was propped up by gains in shipping, electronics, and computer equipment, as well as life insurance. Samsung Electronics was up 0.85%, SK Hynix also jumping 6.03%, Hyundai Motors up 1.76%, and POSCO also up 2.52%. The country's financial authorities have been calling for vigilance over concerns regarding North Korea after the markets were rattled last week by Pyongyang and Washington's trading of verbal threats. Although the markets closed higher today, there is a heightened sense of wariness of short-term volatility.
Now, can you also give us a rundown on the major market events to note this week?
Sure, Ji-yoon. Today, China's factory output data was released, showing that it slowed more than expected last month, while investment and retail sales also disappointed, which many analysts say is a sign that the world's second largest economy is starting to lose some steam as lending costs rise and the property market cools. On Tuesday, U.S. import and export prices will be published, with moderate gains expected despite weakness in consumer and producer prices in July. Import prices have been falling for 2 consecutive months and expected to rise. As for export prices, they're also expected to rise as well. Moving on to Wednesday, minutes from the Fed's July FOMC will be made public. And on Thursday, the index of leading economic indicators will be released as well. The index surged 0.6% in July and was led by a strong rebound in housing permits, which has held down the index during the spring. So investors are expecting low short-term interest rates as well as strength in consumer confidence in this upcoming report as well. Finally, for Friday, the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas President Robert Kaplan participates in a moderated question and answer session at the Dialogue with the Dallas Fed event hosted by the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce.
And many eyes will be on President Moon Jae-in tomorrow when he's set to deliver a speech that will surely touch upon the North Korean threat. So can you tell us more about the impact it has had on local stocks so far?
Sure. Well, following the U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks threatening North Korea will be faced with fire and fury earlier last week, the world market has shed nearly 2% of its total market cap, according to sources. Especially in the local market, almost 77 trillion won has been wiped out, according to data from Bloomberg. This puts particular significance on what President Moon Jae-in will be saying in response to the ongoing remarks between North Korea and the U.S. tomorrow, when he is expected to deliver a speech for the National Liberation Day of Korea. This has been Lee Ji-hye for Business Daily.
China's economy slowed more than expected in July, hampered by rising lending costs and a cooling property market. Factory output grew less than anticipated 6.4% in July, the slowest pace since January, and far short of a Reuters poll that predicted a 7.2% growth. Disappointing figures in investment and retail sales also added to the economy's struggles. Despite slowing growth, the year-long construction boom is continuing to bolster manufacturing activity. Government infrastructure projects have been feeding demand for everything from construction equipment to building materials like cement and steel. The Japanese economy surprised markets by growing 4% in the second quarter, the most in nearly 2 years, blowing by a median growth estimate of 2.5%. With growth expected to continue in the coming months, the Bank of Japan hopes a tight labor market will finally lead to a boost in consumer spending and price growth. Private consumption accounts for around 2/3 of the country's GDP and grew 0.9% in the second quarter, the fastest expansion in over 3 years. Capital expenditures also showed robust growth, expanding at 2.4%. While Japan is generally seen as export-reliant, GDP growth was strong, despite external demand falling 0.3%. A report out of the EU showed 1 in 6 young people in their early 20s were not holding down a job and not under training nor education. In a report released Sunday, Eurostat said 16.7% of the bloc's residents 20 to 24 years old fell into its NEET category, short for neither in education nor employment. It said the country to log the highest NEET ratio was Italy, where nearly 1 in 3 in their early 20s qualified for the designation. Romania and Greece rounded out the top 3. Meanwhile, those who had the lowest NEET rate were the Netherlands at just under 7%, followed by Malta and Denmark. An increasing number of private firms are starting to adopt the government's flexible worker system that was introduced last year. According to the Ministry of Employment and Labor, 462 companies applied for subsidies that they are eligible to receive by adopting the system in the first half of this year. That's a 55% jump compared to the same time last year, with 300 firms applying for the subsidies during the whole of 2016. At the current pace, the government is expecting a threefold increase this year in the number of firms that receive subsidies from adopting the new worker system. Government support is extended to manufacturers with less than 500 employees and firms in the mining, construction, and transportation industry with less than 300 workers. Korea has successfully maneuvered unmanned tilt-rodders from a moving vessel. Taking the lead in the unmanned tilt-rodder drones industry, the country aims to become a serious player in the global drone market. Our Kim Hyo-sun reports.
Korea has successfully achieved landing a 200-kilometer tilt-rotor aerial vehicle capable of vertical takeoff and landing from a vessel traveling at 10 knots. Korea is the only country that has succeeded in such technology.
There are no unmanned tilt-rotor drones in the international market. Korea is in the lead when it comes to this technology.
Accurate landing of the vehicle is the most crucial part of the technology, since it's notoriously difficult to do so on a ship that is on the move. Korea boasts an error range of only 5 centimeters. This is expected to pave a new road for the world's unmanned aircraft industry, as tilt rotors can be used as guides for fishing vessels, surveillance, and search and rescue operations at sea. As other nations join the competition in advancing their unmanned aircraft technologies, it's high time Korea accelerates the commercialization of tilt rotors to lead the global drone market. Kim Hyo-sun, Business Daily.
Korea's tech giants are receiving rave reviews in the European market for the performance of their premium OLED televisions. LG Electronics' 55-inch OLED TV received 5 stars out of 5 from TechRadar, a UK-based tech review website, which called it irresistible, delivering better brightness and light control. Rival Samsung Electronics' Q8 television sets also earned top marks from German magazine Audio Video Photo Bild for its user convenience and added features. Industry watchers say Europe is an important market for Korea's tech giants, with tight competition expected at this year's IFA, the world's leading trade show for consumer electronics and home appliances. With the rapidly aging population, researchers are looking for new ways to help seniors make their way around town. And current developments are focused on assisting the elderly climb up and down ramps and stairs. Our Elliot Kim has the story.
According to current construction standards, stairway heights average 18 centimeters with ramp slopes around 8 degrees. However, recent tests show that the average elderly person can only handle a height of around 15 centimeters and ramps of about 7 degrees. With this in mind, it's easy to see how difficult it could be for the Korean senior population to just get around in their day-to-day lives. Thus, Korean researchers have been testing different solutions. The current idea is a type of automatic handrail that would provide a power assist as people walk up and down ramps or stairs.
It's helpful for people who struggle to climb upstairs. People who struggle can easily climb by grabbing the handrail attachments.
This is seen as a very economical solution to the issue, as the attachment is designed to be added to existing handrails, saving on construction costs to adjust stair heights or ramp angles.
At the end of the day, it's more important to prevent falls when walking. This device balances the person's center of gravity as they grip the handrail attachment.
The research team is also looking for ways to limit access to elderly people by using facial recognition technologies. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
We're hearing more successful cases of residents that are participating in the village enterprise as it helps to create more jobs and generate more profit. So let's take a closer look at how people are finding new hopes through what their villages have to offer.
This small rural village in Yangpyeong, Gyeonggi-do Province appears more lively than others of its kind. It's thanks to the local village enterprise, from which an intoxicating aroma can be detected. Perilla seeds are the main ingredient used by this company, which recorded nearly $800,000 in sales last year by producing and selling low-temperature compressed oil. It was a group decision made by the local residents.
Perilla is a summer crop, but it prefers cool places. The plants grown at cooler places taste better. We chose it because it fits the local environment of Yangpyeong perfectly. In researching trends, we found seeds are popular as superfoods and that modern people require more omega-3. We decided this was our item and to give it a try.
In early June, workers are busy planting perilla seedlings. They place the plants at regular intervals to harvest as much healthy perilla as possible. Planted this way and tended to over the summer, the plants are ready for harvest in late October or early November. The harvest is used to produce oil all year long. Since the formation of the village enterprise, profits increased for both perilla farmers and those growing other crops.
Planting just one type leaves only a grassy field. Avoiding this by planting crops and double cropping provides the advantage of greater harvest yields.
As the plants were grown with such care by the residents, the process of producing perilla oil is likewise a painstaking one. Perilla seeds are sensitive to temperature and moisture. Because of ever-changing conditions, the process of producing oil required endless trial and error. Pressed at low temperatures from raw perilla seeds, the oil is less aromatic than the oil from roasted seeds, but the benefits are twofold. There is a higher concentration of omega-3 and no benzopyrene, a known carcinogen. The result was a highly competitive perilla oil. These benefits lead directly to sales. Thanks to positive word of mouth, the oil became a hit at local food shops nationwide, as well as online and offline channels, including open markets and home shopping channels.
We launched in 2014 and earned nearly $90,000 in 2015. That increased to nearly $800,000 in 2016. It's not because we marketed well, it's because we presented a food for the times and were honest. These days, corporate image is also important.
The village enterprise was launched with just one oil press, obtained through government support. Through the residents' efforts, the entire process of pressing, filtering, filling, capping, and labeling was automated despite the small scale. HACCP certification was obtained, as well as a patent for the equipment. Last year, the company received the top honor at the Village Enterprise Awards hosted by the Ministry of the Interior. As the company grows, its employees feel a sense of accomplishment.
Everything in life, mentally and physically, was great. The positive financial effect was also helpful.
Since even buying all the perilla seeds in Yangpyeong is not enough, farmers can rest assured when they grow that crop.
Cooperatives are also associations and corporations. Profits and survival cannot be ignored. We will raise the barrier to entry by applying for patents. I'm also planning a project to connect to agricultural hands-on tourism that combines the production and service sectors.
Village enterprises create jobs and add vitality to local economies. Hopes are rising that they will secure a strong foothold among local communities.
And that brings us to the end. And because tomorrow, Tuesday, August 15th, is National Liberation Day here in Korea, Business Daily will be back on Wednesday with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and see you soon.